It's 11:29. 11:29. 1 minute before we are scheduled to start our discussion on cannabis legalization and general drug policy. Really. Now, I wanted to speak a bit about my experience of cannabis. Because I kind of want to be persuaded on this in some way, because I smoked cannabis for a long time when I was in my teens, 20s, and early 30s. Almost every day I smoked cannabis. I tried to have cannabis with me all the time. I thought it was going to help me out. It did make me less worried about things, because I'd kind of go off into get high and stuff. But I didn't manage to do much in my life during that time. I had lots of dreams about doing things, but nothing happened. And I also find 20 years on, after I stopped smoking cannabis, that my brain is not quite right. I can't get the words out. I'm spectacularly, considering when I was at school, I was a pretty bright boy, had 3 A's at A level and things like that. I want to know what other people think about cannabis, whether it's should be decriminalized, and other issues like that. So we've got some experts on this matter to speak. So I'm going to bring in Tommy. What do you think about what I just said about my experience? I mean, I feel that I wasn't able to be very productive in, if we're going to have a revolution in this country, which we might need.
Absolutely.
Can we do that if people are smoking cannabis?
Absolutely we can. I think mental health and cannabis, mental health use and cannabis are very linked. I think the use of any recreational substance, be it alcohol or anything, every day is can have a negative effect. There's no doubt about it. And I think that through the prohibition of cannabis, a lot of what's around isn't necessarily the safest or the cleanest. And through prohibition, we've had a massive increase in the amount of THC that's in the cannabis that's being smoked, because that's what the market dictates, that people want more THC. Drug dealers want a more efficient substance that they can sell at a higher price. So I think it is very easy to abuse it, and I think a lot of people, for some people, they're able to use cannabis every day, and it doesn't have a detrimental effect on their life. They're still able to operate. Lawyers, doctors, all sorts of people use cannabis daily. And I think it's more. I think if there's something that's preventing you, and cannabis can give you like an easy way out, it's very easy just to get stoned every day and not tackle the issue, like the underlying issue that's causing you to maybe not progress in your life and not go as far as you'd want to. But I don't see the plant and the substance as being a big danger. I actually think that there's huge benefits that we could be getting from cannabis. I meet people every day that their lives are transformed by cannabis. Some of them with CBD, the product that I sell in the National Hemp Service, and some people with THC, with the part which is unfortunately still illegal. And I think, each to their own. Some people choose to drink alcohol, some people drink it at the weekend, some people drink it every evening. And I think cannabis is much the same as that.
Do you think that because it's illegal, there's no information on it for people who might be using it? So, for example, when I was smoking it, I'd not know how much it would hit me if I smoked it, or
Precisely, but there's no quality control. The chances are some of the times you'd have been smoking relatively good quality weed, and other times it would have been pretty awful. There's lots of factors at play here with when it's illegal, because you've got there's a certain, you're supposed to flush plants at the end of the growth cycle, which a lot of drug dealers don't do because it's a waste of time to them. So you end up with fertilizers still left over in the end product. What are the implications on mental health of smoking fertilizers? And then there's the mold that's able to grow when cannabis is improperly stored, which is known to cause psychosis and which is known to cause mental health issues. And then there's the fact that cannabis use is an indicator of pre-existing mental health. So THC can exacerbate a pre-existing mental health condition that it may well make the problem worse, but it didn't cause it in the first place. So I think there's a whole lot of factors at play here. Obviously more research still needs to be done, which is bizarre in itself because cannabis has been around for thousands of years and we've known that people are using it en masse. So why have we not done this research already?
Do you think that cannabis? I mean, you're probably going to say no, but do you think that cannabis being illegal makes it more likely to be a gateway drug? Whereas if it wasn't illegal, it obviously wouldn't be, would it?
I mean, I think yes, but I also think that alcohol is more of a gateway to harder drugs than cannabis is. I mean, I live in North London, sort of heroin use is rife around here. It's a huge problem, but you don't really see heroin users or people that are living on the street using cannabis. You're much, much more likely to see them using alcohol and crack cocaine or heroin. Cannabis doesn't really get a look in. It's kind of expensive. It's not that appealing to them. So I think the gateway argument for cannabis is, I think if you look at the facts and you look at the research, I don't think it holds up.
Right. Okay. Look, can you stay on the call because we're going to have some more people. It'd be good to hear you later on.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, Bob. Now, what I wanted to ask you was on the the lack of information about cannabis. So people are smoking this without having any knowledge of what it is. And some people like me in the past got kind of hooked on it and couldn't get out of it, used it all the time. What's the answer for people who become addicted in a way to cannabis? Do you think that the NHS has an answer to that? It doesn't seem to be anything out there really.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not an expert in drug policy or cannabis use, but from my experience as a GP, most of substances that are abused and lead to people getting into trouble and seeking my help, the number one is alcohol, of course. In terms of legalizing cannabis, what that does, it provides you an opportunity, as we've heard earlier, to regulate the quality of what people are using. Those same people can be accessing education and support services, because often people who are overusing cannabis recreationally are trying to cope with some other psychological issue very often. So if they're engaging with a regulated, monitored, well-funded service that is providing the cannabis, then that can be used to signpost people into mental health services. The problem is mental health services are decimated. So the amount of money, if we regulate it and tax the sale of cannabis, well, you could put that money into better mental health services. So, if we look at other countries, for example, Portugal 20 years ago decided to look into the legalization of all drugs because they had a massive problem with 1% of the population, 1 in 100 were addicted to hard drugs. And they had huge numbers of people dying of overdose. So they legalized all drugs and put in what they were spending in the police and justice system in supporting people to use drugs safely and get them rehabilitated back into society. Because let's not forget, people who have problem drug use, they are disconnected from society. They often suffering from childhood trauma. Very common cause for unhappy adulthood is unhappy childhood. So if we change the focus from a criminal justice system approach to a health approach, then we can provide the support which is properly funded for those people who have problem use with any drug.
Yeah, I personally, anecdote is I did meet some people who were receiving treatment for mental health issues, who would smoke cannabis, and it would actually mess up their medication and their progress. Is that something that also needs to be considered? If it's legal, then that wouldn't be such an issue, would it? You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more needs to be done in terms of understanding why people are on other mental health drugs, for example. So there's no coincidence that the ban on cannabis occurred when the pharmaceutical industry got going, because they potentially saw this as competition, right? So there was a mass hysteria and propaganda against cannabis use. They were calling it reefer madness and all sorts of things. Even now, there's a tendency for the popular press to label cannabis as causing psychosis. Well, you know, we know that in an unregulated market where you have too much of the psychoactive component, the THC, well, that may tip the vulnerable people into psychosis. But unless we deal with and address the fundamental cause for harmful drug use, which is often psychological, and provide people not with more medication, but with psychotherapy. Psychotherapy within the NHS, to access high quality psychotherapy, is as rare as hen's teeth. And that's where the problem arises. So the current medical model in this country is to put people on prescribed drugs and not deal with their underlying issues. And I don't defend that either. So we need a massive investment in looking at the reasons for people ending up using drugs, dealing with any issues relating to childhood abuse and neglect. And that comes from a wider policy where you look after your population, right? You don't instigate policies which lead to the diseases of despair, which are poverty, which are inequality, which are lack of adequate housing. All these social determinants of health must be tackled as a policy from the top, so we get less problematic drug use. You can't just deal with the end result. We need to deal with the problem upstream.
Right. Well, that's true. I mean, the mental health, the country does not invest at all in mental health, and that's the main problem for people who want to recover from addiction, especially. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
We do have other issues that people have raised from the survey, but we'll show the survey results now. Is that okay, Tina? We've got this one. I got in trouble for asking this question from a couple of people, saying I could incriminate people, and SurveyMonkey might find the results from it. But I won't be sharing whoever said whatever. And there you go. 58% have taken illegal drugs. 36% haven't, and 6% would rather not say. Obviously, they probably didn't take drugs if they'd rather not say. The next one, do you think decriminalization of cannabis is a good idea? Yes, 81%. No, 10%. 9% other. There's always others. And our next slide, do you think cannabis is a gateway drug to more dangerous drugs? Yes, 18%. No, 56%. And 26% other. And the last one that we've got here is, do you think all drugs should be legalized, supplied and regulated by the government? Yes, 57%, no, 27%, and 16% other. So a clear majority think that we should have decriminalization. Now, there were people who replied to the survey to talk about the need for cannabis for pain relief. One of whom is Christine Tong, who's often on the show, but she's not got her camera. She's not got her. Oh, there she is, Norman and Christine. Right. So, Christine, can you tell us how cannabis has helped you through pain relief?
I've got a friend who's got MS. And she grew her own cannabis. It helps her. and she's been making cannabis biscuits and giving me a little supply because I've got arthritis and a failing metal hip joint. And it helps with pain relief. It helps you sleep at night and it cheers you up. And the biscuits are really nice.
Oh, right. What kind of biscuits are they?
They're like shortbread biscuits, but with cannabis and lemon in them.
Cannabis and lemon, right? I didn't know it went well with lemon.
Yeah.
So you I mean, that's something that what is the situation? Is that illegal? What you're doing? I mean,
I've no idea, and I'm not going to say who she is or where she lives.
No. But is that something that there are places where
I meet my drug dealer in a wheelchair in the local car park where all the other kids hang out and deal drugs. But
okay, well, thank you for that. We did have some other people who have been prescribed cannabis who would speak. One was Rachel Tomlinson, or who spoke about maybe not her own use, but has experience of people using it. I don't want to say that. I don't want to get the police around there, Rachel. Can you tell us your experience of pain relief from cannabis?
It isn't actually my experience, but it's
right. Good. You can't be. You're not incriminated.
No, it's down the MS route, obviously, because I've got MS and I do support people with MS, and I volunteer for the MS Society. And it is something that's really beneficial to a lot of people with pain. And there's a I don't know how to describe it, but it's Savatex is the prescribed method, which a lot of CCGs were authorised across the country. Yet the people who are actually on it are benefiting from it, and it's a form of cannabis, but it's not obviously got THC in it.
Right.
But I do know of a lot of people who use it for pain relief, not just for MS, but for arthritis and all the rest of it. And I think there's got to be some sort of route to be able to get it that way. It sort of goes back to the young lad that wasn't allowed to fly with it last year, and they stopped him using it. Was it for epileptic fits or something like that? But I think there's got to be some sort of route to it for the people that do really need it. Right. And by decriminalising it, then yes, they should then be able to have that route. And we shouldn't have people meeting in wheelchairs in pub car parks, should we?
With
to swap hash cakes.
Yeah. Shortbread with lemon and cannabis biscuits. Yeah. Well,
yeah, there's also, I mean, I've heard of this chocolate. There's all sorts of different ones you can do with this.
Well, I'm not going back into it through confectionery. Thank you.
No, not
thank
at all. No,
thank you, Rachel.
To...
Cheers. John Gibson replied to the survey and he has his hand up, so we know he's there. John, what would you like to say about what you've heard? 40 years, it said, of smoking. Yeah. Would you prefer it in biscuit form?
Really, I didn't want to concentrate on my own consumption, which, as you say, has been over 40 years of use.
That's not this week. There's none around the house now. It's all like a few months ago you stopped.
I've had to knock it on the head, I'm afraid. A bit tempted by Christine's idea of having it in shortbread, but no, the smoking game I've had to knock that on the head. And it's probably, in my view, it's because I mixed it with tobacco. And I believe that's caused me some chest problems. And that's why I've had to knock all the smoking on the head. So that's that to one side. The thing I think is that we should be aiming for a fairer and more caring society. And as such, we shouldn't be criminalising people for using recreational drugs. We should be providing care for them, much in the way that Dr. Bob Gill described, but we should be providing a pathway for people so that if they feel a need to use recreational drugs, there's ways to help them and treat drug use not as a crime, but treat it as a health issue. And I think, you know, there's lots of arguments to be had about whether it causes harm or not. And 40 years of experience, I seem to have got away with it pretty well. I've never been psychotic, but I have seen other people who have had issues with other drugs. And, you know, I still say all drugs should be legal. And I think that what they've done in Portugal seems to me to be a sensible way forward that provides a caring environment for people rather than criminalising people. One last point is I note that much of the legislation against drug use has been used as a tool for racist law authorities to attack minorities, particularly Black and ethnic minority people, both here and in the States. So decriminalising recreational drugs would remove that tool from their arsenal and provide for a safer life for people who around the world. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. I have to say, my experience was that I was only cautioned once for cannabis, and that was when I was with my friend who's Black. It was it was quite, and the stories from my friends who used to smoke cannabis who were Black was that they had to hide it in all kinds of places. I'd never thought of having to hide it, like in the hollows of rings and things like that. I mean, just crazy. The police all the time harassing people for cannabis is definitely a good reason for some kind of decriminalisation, in my opinion. But Jessica from Maidstone, this is so you're ready, Jessica. You don't think that the government should be, if we do legalise it, the government shouldn't be running the operation. Is that right?
Yep. I absolutely don't think they should be, for one reason, and that is that will surely lead to Big Pharma having some kind of stranglehold on the production of cannabis. And one of the problems that we're going to have to look at with this debate is things to do with patents, because that's what pharmaceutical companies are very keen on. We've seen that with the vaccines, with COVID, and Big Pharma refusing to release patents, so that the vaccines can be made generically. Now, what the problem they have with cannabis is that it's a plant. How can you patent a plant? But as sure as eggs is eggs, you know, if they get a look in this country, they'll try and do that. And as soon as they try and do that, then the prices will go up. If it's if you look at Canada or certain states in America, that's exactly what's happened there. And obviously that's going to affect the people that most need it for medical reasons, certainly the worst. And that's the disabled community, people who've already spoken on this call, who use it for pain relief. But I do want to say one thing. So I've also, I've used cannabis myself in the past. I want to quote a friend of mine who's an old hippie. He's in his late 60s now. And we were having this discussion some years ago. And he said, you know what, I recently was with my nephew and we had a joint together. And I couldn't believe how much he put in that joint. And when I had a few puffs, said I was just amazed at the strength of it and I couldn't handle it. And I think that's testament to the way that cannabis has been hybridized and grown in the last 50 years. It's become much, much stronger. And unfortunately, because we don't have any choice in this country, a lot of people will be buying stuff that is very strong, you know, skunk being a good example of that. And if you don't have the choice and you don't know what, you don't know what variety it is, you can't test it before you consume it, then how do you know how it's going to affect you? So I think, I'm very skeptical about how it should be regulated. And I'm very concerned about the role of government in that, because I don't think, well, certainly the current lot are completely unenlightened about it. And I'm not entirely sure that even a Labour government, as they currently stand, would be particularly enlightened about it either.
Yeah, it's a good point about what would happen when it is, if it were legalised. Yeah, I might actually bring Tommy back in on that one, because I think that's quite an interesting point. Tommy, are you still there? Oh, I've got.
Hello.
Hi, Tommy. Yeah, I mean, this idea of the government or farmer supposing it were legalised and farmer took over. I mean, that would be a bit of a disaster, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is the worry, that it's going to be that if it is eventually legalised, it's going to be done with the interests of people that are already billionaires, profiting even more from it. I absolutely think we need to look at kind of different models of legalisation. Before this call, I was watching a thing about certain states in the US where they're trying to do everything they can to help the communities that were hit the hardest by prohibition, that, you know, the sort of black communities that were very disproportionately affected by the way it was policed, to now help them get a leg up in the industry. And I think things like that are really important. We need to look at ways that the legalization of cannabis can also be used to heal some of the damage that was done by the war on drugs. I think that needs to be part of the conversation, and it can't just be all about money and, you know, all about, you know, the just big money profiting even more, because, you know, inevitably if it's done by a Tory government, that's how it's going to go, or indeed a Labour government with the current leadership.
Yeah, what we got now, yeah. What's your experience of the police on this issue? Because as I say, I've only ever faced trouble when I was with a black guy walking down the road.
It's completely the same. I never got any trouble when I was younger. If we got caught smoking a joint, it was no problem. A lot of my black friends would have a very, very different experience. They'd be taken in the back of a van, strip searched, all sorts. And you could really see it. It was just completely different, the way that people were handled, depending on their background, depending on, you know, where they come from, what they look like. It could have been a very, very different thing. And I find that cannabis gets used by police a lot. They don't really care about the substance. So it's just like, if you want an excuse to pull someone up, you know, you just say that you smell a bit of weed. It used to get done all the time. You know, we suspect you of cannabis use. Here we go.
And I've heard they actually take it and use it themselves after they've arrested. But anyway,
I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens. Do you know what I mean?
It's not. They don't really take it seriously. They just take an opportunity to hassle people, really, if they don't like someone.
Completely.
So I think that's another reason why we should do something about decriminalising it, because it's just not helping anyone. Thank you, Tommy. I'm going to go to Tony Greenstein, who wrote also about the kind of mythologizing of cannabis, and how which Bob Gill mentioned as well, with this reefer madness. Were you scared by what you heard about cannabis, or did it make you feel that you wanted to smoke it more, Tony?
Well, I've smoked it for about 50 years now, but unlike you, I've been busted 5 times, so I've obviously been very unlucky. I was once busted smoking it or rolling it outside a police station. I didn't realise it was a police station, unfortunately. I was on the way to the Windsor Pop Festival, for those who are old enough to remember it. But cannabis is the least harmful drug. I mean, the reason it was first banned in the United States, and it was explicitly banned in order to find a pretext for attacking black people. I mean, it had nothing to do with health reasons. The main danger from drugs is prescribed drugs. In America, there's a massive problem with morphine addiction. and that's been pushed by the big drug companies. So it's really got nothing. It's a matter of civil liberties. I mean, you have the right, if you want, to damage your own health, but cannabis on the whole is a very mild drug. I mean, yes, it will have side effects for some people, but which drugs don't? I mean, vaccines have side effects. Do we therefore say we shouldn't have vaccines, which is the argument of some people? It's not really logical. I favour decriminalisation, not legalisation. But the war on drugs, I mean, the United States has used the war on drugs as a means of justifying imperialism in Latin America, Colombia, and other countries. It really has nothing to do with stopping crime, stopping the danger to health, and so on. There's nothing more dangerous than having the American military involved in certain countries. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. And anyway, the CIA has been involved up to its neck in drug distribution when it wanted. So it's a complete and utter nonsense. But I really do think it's a matter of basic personal individual freedom. The state should not have the right to tell you what you can or what you can't take. It's your choice. I mean, of course, I mean, children need to be protected, but then, you know, they need to be protected from cigarettes and alcohol at a young age as well. That's not an argument for making them illegal, but having worked for much of my life in an unemployed centre, I can tell you the problem is not cannabis. The problem is alcohol. If you see people who are alcoholics, you know, I mean, they're almost not in control of themselves sometimes, including their bodily functions. I mean, alcohol has a really destructive effect on thousands upon thousands of people. And that's not the same with cannabis. I mean, I say, I smoked it for 50 years and I don't think I'm that sleepy or that dopey. And to be quite honest, Crispin, I mean, I've listened to you and I wouldn't have realised that you had been so affected by cannabis that you can't get your words out. I mean, I think you're pretty articulate, so I really wouldn't worry about it.
Well, thank you, Tony. You've given me a great lift this morning for that.
That's okay.
And, now, Ruth Appleton wrote in as well on the survey. Ruth, are you there?
Yeah. I wanted to say I agree with Dr. Bob, and there's another professional who has got a kind of cult following, and that is Professor David Nutt, N-U-T-T. I don't know if people have heard of him, but he's very pro the libertarian view on cannabis. And I mean, having been to college and done it recreationally, I used to think, oh, there's no harm in it. I do think there's harm in it because of what people are saying, how it's become skunk now. It's not, people don't necessarily buy cannabis now, they buy skunk. And that's very harmful. But I think it should be legalized because this whole, you know, when you live in a capitalist economy, the pressure is to buy, whether you need it or not. There is, you know, a killing to be made in product placement, you know, and the cannabis is part of that. I mean, I was babysitting for my grandchild and I was told when the parents went out, they said to me, give her some of this Tixie Licks. It's a cough mixture for children. Because she said she had a little slight cough, you know, and every time she's got a cough, they give her the Tixie Licks and then she goes to sleep. It's probably got an element of codeine in it or something. But I said to my granddaughter, I know your parents said that you need this Tixie Licks, but let's try without tonight because I think you can go to sleep without it. And she did. You know, it's a question of a culture. If you've grown up in a culture where you have to take something every time you've got a slight problem health-wise, then you grow up thinking, well, I've got to take something, you know, instead of tackling the problem head on.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think it's part of capitalist culture to make you buy something. Doesn't matter what it is, just buy something. And cannabis is part of that. But I do think it is a gateway drug. And but if it was decriminalized, it would be so much better because the the crime element of purchasing, first of all, it makes it, you know, a part of the cool gang. If you're doing something criminal, then you're cool, you know, you're living in a subculture.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you know, and apart from that, the decriminalization would mean you're not part of a cool thing anymore. You're just doing what everyone does. So I think that would be good. And also the fact is that if you've got the sorts of problems that all teenagers have, you know, you don't have to be mentally ill, but teenage life is problematic, full stop. If you can't deal with it other than by using a substance, whether it's alcohol or something else, then you're not in the right culture. And it's the culture that needs to change. You know, when my daughter was in primary school, they had a little culture of, if somebody bullies you, you tell other people. And what they did was they ganged up against the bully. You know, it's that kind of community action that changes people's lives. We know that from Corbyn's philosophy, community action. And, you know, and then you don't feel alone and you need to be in a cool subculture. You know what I mean? We're all the same. We should all be fighting each other's problems together and not having to purchase a substance to get out of it. You know, I don't want to be out of it. I want to be in it. You know?
Right. Thank you.